Midrand, Gauteng, long regarded as a quiet and largely unremarkable area of small holdings and gated estates, was thrust into the national spotlight this week when a covert police operation exposed a reality few residents imagined existed behind its calm exterior. On Tuesday evening, a multidisciplinary police task team moved in with precision, the culmination of weeks of intelligence gathering, surveillance, and coordination. What unfolded was not a routine raid but the unmasking of a deeply entrenched criminal operation operating in plain sight. Inside a nondescript property in Blue Hills, officers uncovered 80 kilograms of cocaine, carefully hidden behind garage walls and within a deliberately concealed storage room. With an estimated street value of 20 million rand and a planned destination of Cape Town, the consignment represented far more than drugs alone. It was tangible proof of a sophisticated, well-resourced network designed purely for profit, and it resulted in at least one arrest. Yet the significance of the bust went far beyond the seizure itself. It delivered a stark message about how deeply organized crime has woven itself into suburban South African life. This operation shattered the outdated assumption that major drug syndicates operate only from abandoned warehouses, industrial zones, or remote farmsteads. Instead, they have embedded themselves within ordinary communities, using properties that blend seamlessly into their surroundings. Small holdings in areas like Midrand offer the perfect camouflage, not suspicious enough to draw attention, yet strategically positioned near major transport corridors and highways. Close to Johannesburg and within logistical reach of multiple provinces, such locations allow traffickers to move product quickly while avoiding intense scrutiny. These are not random choices but calculated decisions informed by experience, risk assessment, and an understanding of systemic blind spots in oversight and policing. The South African Police Service's official statement was characteristically brief and formal, confirming that crime intelligence had coordinated a multi-unit operation leading to the seizure of 80 kilograms of cocaine. That statement, however, barely scratches the surface of what this discovery represents. Behind those carefully chosen words lies a complex infrastructure involving cross-border smuggling routes, provincial transit points, storage hubs, financial channels, and layers of intermediaries designed to insulate those at the top from direct exposure. Preliminary investigations indicate that the cocaine entered South Africa through a neighboring country, was smuggled across a porous border, transported across provinces, stored temporarily in Midrand, and prepared for onward movement to Cape Town. This alone points to a network that transcends both provincial and national boundaries, engineered for efficiency and protected by compartmentalization. The deployment of specialized units underscored the seriousness of the operation. Members of the Organized Crime Unit, the Johannesburg K9 Unit, and the local Criminal Record Center were all involved, a clear signal that this was not a case of petty dealing or opportunistic crime. This was syndicate-level activity, involving substantial capital, planning, and coordination. A 56-year-old man, identified as the owner of the plot, is now in police custody and faces potential charges related to possession and dealing. Yet on a scale of this magnitude, it is highly unlikely that he is the mastermind. More plausibly, he represents a link in a much longer chain, a buffer between law enforcement and the true architects who remain hidden behind layers of distance, money, and expendable intermediaries recruited precisely to absorb the first impact when operations are exposed. In drug trafficking, storage points are critical. Without secure, discrete locations to store large quantities of narcotics, distribution networks falter and profits evaporate. Strategic hubs like the Midrand plot are essential nodes in the chain, enabling syndicates to manage supply, control timing, and minimize risk. Taking out such a node is therefore significant, but it remains only a single battle in a protracted and evolving war. For every storage site uncovered, several others likely remain untouched, quietly operating while attention focuses elsewhere. Several important lessons emerge from this operation. The first is the central role of intelligence-led policing. The fact that crime intelligence drove this bust demonstrates that reactive policing, responding only after crimes have occurred, is increasingly ineffective against modern syndicates. These organizations operate quietly, strategically, and often invisibly, leaving few overt signs of activity. Only through sustained infiltration, surveillance, and information gathering can their footprints be detected. Without intelligence, storage facilities like the one in Blue Hills can remain operational for years, moving vast quantities of drugs without interruption. Secondly, the operation highlights the limitations of visible policing. Routine patrols and standard law enforcement presence are simply not designed to uncover this level of criminal activity. Specialized units, trained dogs, and coordinated interdepartmental efforts were necessary because the operation was carefully layered and professionally managed. The choice of a quiet suburban setting signals a deliberate shift in criminal strategy. Syndicates are moving away from informal settlements and industrial zones, opting instead to hide within middle-class environments where they can blend seamlessly into legitimate residential life. Thirdly, the bust underscores the inseparable link between drug trafficking and money laundering. A consignment worth 20 million rand implies not only significant immediate value but also millions more in downstream cash flow. That money does not circulate openly. It moves through shell companies, obscure bank accounts, property transactions, and informal financial networks designed to obscure its origins. Seizing the drugs disrupts this system temporarily, but it does not dismantle the financial machinery that sustains it. Without aggressive asset tracing and forfeiture, the underlying economic engine remains intact. The operation also exposes systemic vulnerabilities that make such networks possible. Small holding properties often fall into regulatory gray zones, subject to less scrutiny than urban residences but lacking the oversight applied to commercial or industrial facilities. Oversight is weak, inspections are rare, and jurisdictional boundaries between urban and rural administration create cracks where criminal activity can flourish. These gaps are well known to syndicates, which exploit them ruthlessly. The choice of Midrand was not incidental but indicative of how criminals map and exploit institutional weaknesses. The intended destination of the cocaine, Cape Town, adds another layer of urgency. The city is already grappling with entrenched gang violence, drug wars, and the corrosive influence of organized crime. Removing 80 kilograms of cocaine from circulation could save lives, delay violent confrontations, and disrupt local distribution chains. However, it would be dangerously naive to assume that this single seizure will permanently alter the landscape. Syndicates adapt rapidly. Routes change, new storage sites are established, and alternative intermediaries are recruited. Without systemic reform, another Midrand plot will soon take its place. The arrest associated with this bust raises uncomfortable questions about accountability and transparency. Who truly sits at the top of this operation? Who financed the consignment? Who facilitated its movement across borders, and where are the other storage facilities that support the network? This case is not just about drugs, it is about corruption, complicity, and the invisible hands that allow such operations to thrive. The public hears about the value of the seizure, but rarely about how syndicates form, how property ownership changes hands without triggering alarms, or how compliance failures and infrastructure loopholes are exploited. In a country battling deep inequality, high unemployment, and slow justice, the drug economy functions as a parallel system. As legitimate opportunities shrink, illegal markets expand, fueled by desperation and greed. The risks are real, but for many participants, the rewards appear to outweigh them. Policymakers must confront an uncomfortable question: are these operations evidence of meaningful progress, or are they merely the leftovers of a much larger, largely untouched criminal economy? For communities in Midrand, Blue Hills, and Cape Town, the consequences of this trade are tangible and deeply personal. Students endure drug-related violence, Parents lose children to addiction and overdoses, families face burglaries driven by dependency, and taxpayers watch resources drained by both law enforcement efforts and criminal profiteering. A 20 million rand seizure is significant, but in global crime economics, it represents a fraction of the trade's true scale. This moment should serve as a clarion call for reform. Intelligence-led policing must be entrenched, not treated as an exception. Property regulation in high-risk zones needs tightening, border controls require serious reinforcement, and cross-provincial coordination must become predictable rather than ad hoc. Financial investigations and asset forfeiture should be aggressive and relentless, targeting not just drugs but the wealth they generate. Without such measures, taking out one storage hub simply creates space for 5 more to emerge. The Midrand bust is undeniably a victory, but it is not the war. Without fundamental changes, the next shipment will arrive, the next plot will be repurposed, and the cycle will continue. The casualties, addicted youth, devastated families, and weakened institutions, are too real to ignore. South Africa cannot afford to remain reactive. It must move decisively toward a proactive, intelligence-driven, systemic, and transparent approach. Quiet suburban plots can no longer serve as shadows for criminal enterprise, and those who once hid comfortably behind electric gates and manicured hedges are now facing exposure. South Africa is watching, the world is watching, and the silence that once protected these networks is finally beginning to break.